like this video, and subscribe to our channel to witness the world's most epic comebacks. What if the person everyone dismisses as an amateur is actually the hidden key to a multi-billion-dollar empire? Get ready, because the story of Eliza Petrov is about to drop a nuclear bomb on the old world order. Execution on the red carpet. The air on the red carpet in Monaco that fateful evening in 2003 didn't smell of perfume and ocean mist. It reeked of betrayal and old money's cold disdain. For Eliza Petrov, the roar of the crowd was a firing squad, and the flashing cameras were bullets. Standing next to her husband, Alexander Thorne, an ambitious man whose love had long faded into a transactional shadow, she was being publicly executed. The Thorne family, old titans of the East Coast shipping industry, were systematically dismantling her dignity for the world to see. They saw her as nothing but a common stone they couldn't polish into the diamond they truly wanted. Their plan was simple: discard her. But what they and the entire world were about to learn was this: Eliza was not a stone. She was the cornerstone of an empire they never even knew existed. The gilded cage, the atmosphere in the Thornes' penthouse in Miami, overlooking the vast, dark Atlantic, was thin and artificial, a chill that had nothing to do with the cool December air. It was the perpetual frost of judgment, emanating from the matriarch, Eleanor Thorne. Eliza felt it in her bones as she adjusted the simple, midnight blue silk of her dress. She had designed the gown herself. Architecture was her true passion and profession, a world of clean lines, structural integrity, and purpose. She'd tried to translate those principles into her design. Elegant, restrained, strong. But in the Thorne world, restrained was just another word for insufficient. "Is that what you're wearing?" Eliza turned. Alexander stood in the doorway of their suite, impeccable in a custom Savile Row tuxedo. His dark hair was perfect, but a familiar tension pulled at his jaw. He wasn't looking at her. He was assessing her, scanning the dress like a building inspector, searching for a code violation. "I designed it," Eliza said, a flicker of pride she immediately regretted. Pride was not currency the Thornes valued from her. "I realize that," he replied, his words sharper than a dagger. "It's simple. Serafina Vance is wearing a bespoke Chanel tonight. The pre-gala press is already calling it the look of the decade." Eliza's heart did a slow, painful flip. Serafina Vance, of course. The woman Eleanor had always desired as a daughter-in-law, a woman whose lineage was as ancient and storied as theirs, whose family owned half of Manhattan's banking sector. Serafina was everything Eliza was not. "My goal wasn't to be the look of the decade," Eliza retorted, keeping her voice steady. "It's a charity gala, Alex. We're here to support the Children's Literacy Foundation." "We are here to be seen," he corrected her sharply. "We are here to remind people that the Thorne name still means something, especially now." The unspoken words hung between them. The Thorne Corporation, a legacy in luxury maritime logistics, was bleeding money. Whispers in the financial columns had become worried murmurs. A series of risky offshore investments had gone south, and Alexander, the heir, was under immense pressure to project an image of unshakable stability, an image his simple wife apparently tarnished. "Mother is waiting downstairs," he said, turning away. "Don't be late. And for heaven's sake, put on the Thorne sapphires. At least try to look the part." He left without another word. Eliza walked to the velvet-lined jewelry case. Nestled inside, on a bed of white silk, was the infamous Thorne necklace. It was a monstrous, breathtaking piece, a cascade of Himalayan blue sapphires and brilliant cut diamonds. It was also heavy, cold, and felt less like a gift and more like a yoke. She had worn it once at her wedding and felt like an imposter. With a sigh, she lifted the weighty piece and clasped it around her neck. The stones were ice cold against her skin. Looking in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. The simple elegance of her gown was now overwhelmed by the necklace's ostentatious shine. The woman in the mirror looked trapped, a walking billboard for a dynasty that despised her. She was Eliza Thorne, a name that felt more like a brand than an identity. The girl she used to be, Anna Petrova, the determined architecture student who paid her tuition by waitressing, felt like a ghost from another life. Downstairs, the cold intensified. Eleanor Thorne stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a specter in silver Oscar de la Renta, her posture as rigid as the steel beams of the skyscraper they lived in. She turned as Eliza descended the marble staircase, her eyes the color of faded old money, performing the same dismissive scan Alexander had. "You decided to wear the necklace," Eleanor said, her voice a dry silk whisper. "A wise choice. It distracts from the austerity of the dress." "Hello, Eleanor," Eliza said, forcing a small smile. "Let's be clear about tonight, Eliza," the older woman continued, ignoring the greeting. "The photographers will be out in force. You will smile. You will stay half a step behind Alexander. When questions are directed to you, you will defer to him. Your only job is to be a silent, beautiful accessory. Can you do that?" The condescension was so thick, Eliza felt she could choke on it. This was her life, a set of instructions on how to be invisible, how to shrink to fit the impossibly small box they had built for her. "I understand," Eliza murmured. "Good," Eleanor said, turning back to the window. "Because the Thorne legacy is fragile right now. We cannot afford a single misstep." As the three descended in the silent elevator towards the waiting town car, Eliza felt the weight of the sapphires pressing down on her, each stone a reminder of her failure to belong. She caught her reflection in the polished brass of the elevator doors. The woman staring back looked terrified, and for the first time, Eliza didn't blame her. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the core, that tonight was going to be more than just another uncomfortable social event. It was going to be an ordeal. The crucifixion. The limousine pulled to the foot of the grand steps of the Monaco Opera House. The instant the door opened, a wall of sound and light hit them. The roar of the crowd, the staccato bursts of hundreds of flashes, the shouted questions from the press. It was a sensory assault designed to overwhelm. Alexander stepped out first, a confident smile plastered on his face. He was in his element. He turned and offered a hand to his mother, who emerged with the majestic grace of a queen. Then he turned to Eliza. His hand was cold and impersonal, his grasp a superficial gesture. As Eliza stepped onto the luxurious red carpet, the flashes seemed to intensify. She felt thousands of eyes on her, dissecting her, judging her. The sapphire dress, which had felt so right in her apartment, now felt desperately simple compared to the haute couture gowns that looked like walking works of art. The thorn sapphires around her neck felt like a neon sign broadcasting her inadequacy. "Alexander! Eleanor! Over here!" the photographers yelled. The thorns moved with practiced ease, posing, turning, smiling. Eliza tried to follow Eleanor's instructions, staying half a step behind Alexander, her smile feeling like a cheap mask. A reporter from the New York Business Chronicle, a woman with a notoriously sharp pen named Brenda Hill, thrust her microphone forward. "Alexander, another stunning gala. How is the Thorne Corporation continuing to weather the current market uncertainties with such confidence?" "Confidence is in our DNA," Alexander said smoothly, his voice ringing with false bravado. "We build on foundations of stone, not sand. We've seen a dozen market cycles. This is no different." "And your charming wife," Brenda said, her eyes sharp as a hawk, turning to Eliza. "Eliza." That's a very minimalist design for the opera gala. A bold statement. Who are you wearing? The question was a baited hook. Eliza knew it. To say, I designed it myself, would sound arrogant and amateur. Lying wasn't an option. It's a personal design, Eliza said quietly, her voice barely audible over the din. Before she could say more, Eleanor glided forward, her smile as sharp as broken glass. My daughter-in-law has a charming affinity for simplicity. She believes true elegance needn't shout. The words sounded like a compliment, but the delivery was a masterclass in condescension. Charming affinity. Simplicity. In this context, they were insults, painting Eliza as a naive, provincial girl who simply didn't understand the rules of their world. The other reporters scribbled furiously. The temperature in the air dropped several degrees as a long, impossibly sleek white Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up behind them. The door opened, and Serafina Vance stepped out in her Chanel gown. It was a spectacular creation. Crimson silk and hand-stitched gold thread. A dress that didn't just enter a room, it conquered it. She looked like a goddess of fire and wealth. Serafina! The photographers roared, their attention instantly shifting. Serafina smiled, a dazzling, confident grin that reached her eyes. She walked towards them, and the press line parted for her as if by divine command. Eleanor, you are absolutely radiant, Serafina said, air-kissing the matriarch's cheek. And Alexander? So handsome. Her eyes landed on Eliza for a millisecond, a look of such quick disdain it was almost subliminal. She didn't even acknowledge her name. Alexander's strained smile suddenly became genuine. Serafina, you look breathtaking. Chanel was kind enough to send it directly from their Paris atelier, she said, with a casual wave of her hand, as if speaking about the weather. Then came the final, most brutal blow. Brenda Hill, sensing the drama, stepped forward again. Mrs. Thorne! Her voice was loud and clear, directed at Eliza. There are rumors that you haven't fully assimilated into the Thorne lifestyle. Some say you're more comfortable at a drafting table than a society dinner. How do you respond to critics who say you're not the right partner to help lead a legacy brand like Thorne in turbulent times? The question was a dagger, and it twisted. All sound seemed to fade, except the frantic clicking of the cameras. Eliza looked at Alexander, her eyes pleading for him to intervene, to defend her, to say anything. He held her gaze for a minimal instant, and in that moment, she saw everything. His panic, his weakness, his choice. He turned away from her, toward Serafina, and placed a hand lightly on the small of the other woman's back. I think, Alexander said, his voice ringing with false charm, addressing the press but looking at Serafina, that tonight is about charity, not baseless gossip. Thorne is and always will be synonymous with strength and tradition. We are looking to the future. He didn't defend her. He didn't even acknowledge her. He aligned himself, physically and verbally, with Serafina, the embodiment of the strength and tradition he spoke of. He had left his wife alone, exposed, and humiliated on the red carpet. The cameras swiveled to Eliza like a firing squad. The flashes were blinding, capturing the sheen of unshed tears in her eyes, the way her hand trembled as she gripped her small purse. Eleanor watched with a look of cold victory. Serafina offered a small, pitying smile. In that moment, Eliza Thorne ceased to exist. She was only the wife, the outsider, the mistake. The world was watching as she was erased. With what little dignity she had left, she turned, breaking from the frozen tableau of her husband and his referred partner, and walked away from the lights, the cameras, her sapphire dress a solitary, sharp cut of color against the overwhelming blood-red carpet. She was fleeing not just the gala, but the entire life that had just utterly rejected her. Interactive question. Nếu là Eliza, ngay lúc đó, bạn sẽ làm gì với chiếc vòng cổ Sapphire vô giá của nhà Thorne? Hãy bình luận ý kiến của bạn ở phía dưới. The hidden heir. The heavy doors of the opera house closed behind her, muffling the cacophony of the red carpet. The sudden silence was more deafening than the noise. Eliza found herself in a hushed marble hall, the air smelling of floor wax and ancient history. The humiliation burned hotter now in the silence. She leaned against a cool marble column, the cold seeping through the thin silk of her dress. The Thorne sapphires felt like a lead weight, choking her. With trembling fingers, she fumbled with the clasp until it unhooked. She held the ridiculously expensive necklace in her palm. Its weight and value felt obscene. It was the price of her servitude, and she wanted nothing to do with it. Her phone vibrated in her clutch. Alexander's name flashed across the screen. She ignored it. It vibrated again. And again. He wasn't calling out of concern. He was calling for damage control. He needed his accessory back in place. With a surge of defiance, Eliza's fingers closed around the necklace. She spotted a decorative stone urn near the entrance, filled with cigarette sand. Without a second thought, she walked over and dropped the legendary Thorne sapphires into the sand, burying them with a dismissive swipe of her hand. It was a small act of rebellion, but it felt monumental. It was the first decision she had made for herself in years. She exited the doors and stepped out into the cool night air, bypassing the red carpet and walking out onto the street. The lights of the city blurred through her tears. She had no destination. She just walked, the click of her heels on the pavement a frantic, lonely rhythm. After walking what felt like miles, her feet throbbing in her expensive, unsuitable heels, she found herself in a small, quiet park. She sat on a cold iron bench, the sounds of the city now a distant hum. It was over. The marriage, the pretense, the endless effort to try and earn a love that was never truly hers. As she sat there, a long, impossibly sleek black sedan, a Maybach S-Class, pulled up to the curb by the park. It was so silent it seemed to have materialized from the shadows. The back window slid down, revealing a man in a dark suit. He was not the driver. He had a stern, weathered face, graying at the temples, and eyes that seemed to see everything. "Anna Petrova?" he asked. His voice was deep, with a slight, unmistakable Eastern European accent. The sound of her maiden name was a shock. No one had called her that in years. Instinctively, she drew back, clutching her purse. "Who are you?" "My name is Mikhail," the man said, his expression unreadable. "I am your father's head of security. He has sent me to bring you in." Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. "My father?" she whispered. "My father is dead. He died years ago." She had been 10 years old when she lost him in a tragic industrial accident, or so her mother had always told her. Her mother, who had passed away just before Eliza went to college, had raised her alone, always struggling, always telling Eliza that they only had each other. Mikhail's face softened with something that looked like pity. "Your father, Konstantin Volkov, is very much alive. He has been watching you from a distance, honoring your mother's wishes. But tonight, this evening, he decided that was no longer tenable. He is waiting for you. Please, get in the car." Eliza's mind reeled. Konstantin Volkov. The name was thunder. It was not a common name. It belonged to a ghost, a legend in the world of global commerce. Konstantin Volkov was the press-shunning, reclusive founder and CEO of Volkov Global Logistics, a sprawling, multi-billion-dollar empire that controlled shipping routes, rare earth mineral mines, and cutting-edge technology firms. He was a phantom, a man whose photo hadn't been published in 2 decades. He was rumored to be ruthless, brilliant, and utterly solitary. And he was her father. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "It's impossible. It's a mistake." "There is no mistake," Mikhail said softly. He held up a small, worn photograph. It showed a younger man with intense, dark eyes, holding a little girl with bright, curious eyes and a missing front tooth. The girl was holding a meticulously constructed model of a bridge made from popsicle sticks. Eliza gasped. She remembered that day. She remembered that bridge. She had a faded copy of that exact photo in a box beneath her bed. The world tilted on its axis. Her entire life, her entire history, was a lie. Her father wasn't a dead factory worker. He was Konstantin Volkov. Stunned, she stood up. The choice was between sitting on a cold park bench, a disgraced socialite with nowhere to go, or getting into a car that promised either the beginning of a cruel joke or the end of the life she knew. She looked into Mikhail's steady, patient eyes. For the first time all night, she felt a glimmer of something other than despair. It was a terrifying, exhilarating flash of hope. She walked to the car and got in. The door closed with a soft, solid thud, sealing her off from the world of the thorns and plunging her into an unknown future. The revelation, they drove to a private airfield on the outskirts of the city, where a sleek Gulfstream G700S jet waited on the tarmac, its engines quietly humming. The name Volkov was etched powerfully on its tail. Mikhail led her up the stairs into an interior that looked less like a plane and more like a minimalist, airborne apartment. Everything was muted grays, polished chrome, and dark wood. At the far end of the cabin, in a large leather club chair, a man was seated, looking out the window at the glittering city lights. He turned as she approached. It was him. Older, of course. His dark hair was now streaked with silver, and lines of stress and concentration were etched around his eyes and mouth. But the eyes were the same, dark, fiercely intelligent, and at that moment, filled with a deep, painful sadness. He was dressed in simple, perfectly tailored dark trousers and a sweater. There was an aura of immense, contained power about him, a stillness that was more imposing than any loud gesture. "Anna," he said. His voice was the same deep rumble of her memories. He used the Russian diminutive of her name, a sound she hadn't heard in 2 decades. "I was told you died," she said, her own voice a choked whisper. Konstantin Volkov stood up. He was a tall man and seemed to fill the cabin. "Your mother, Katerina, wanted a different life for you, a normal life." He gestured vaguely to the opulent surroundings. "Away from me, away from this. When I founded my company, the risks were great. My rivals were not kind men. She feared for you. She took you and disappeared. She made me promise not to interfere unless it was a matter of life and death." "And tonight was a matter of life and death?" Anna asked, a bitter edge to her voice. "Watching your spirit die is a matter of life and death," he answered, his gaze unwavering. "I honored my promise for 25 years. I watched you grow from afar. I saw you earn your architecture degree from the Polytechnic Institute of Madrid, top of your class. I saw you win the Young Scholarship for your sustainable housing design. You were brilliant. You were strong." His voice hardened. "And then I watched you marry that boy, that weak, characterless heir who allowed his mother to chip away at your soul until almost nothing was left. I watched you dim your own light to make them comfortable. Tonight, I saw them try to extinguish it completely. My promise to your mother did not include allowing her daughter to be destroyed." Tears streamed down Anna's face now, hot and silent. He knew. He had seen her. Everything. The triumphs she thought were hers alone. The slow, painful erosion of her spirit she thought no one else noticed. "Why didn't you tell me?" she sobbed. "Why let me believe you were gone?" "It was your mother's dying wish," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "She made her sister promise to keep the secret. She was proud and terrified of this world. She believed my name would be a curse, a weight that would crush your dreams. She wanted you to build your own life, and you did. You became an architect, Anna. You build things that last. It is in your blood. It is in mine." He stepped closer and gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. His touch was hesitant, unfamiliar, but fatherly. "That life, the Thorn life, is over," he said, his tone shifting from emotional to utterly resolute, the voice of a market-moving CEO. "They think you are a nobody. They are about to learn that you are a Volkov, and we do not build on sand. We build on the bones of our enemies." Mikhail approached them. "Sir, we have the final reports. The Thorn Corporation is leveraged to the hilt. They have a $300 million bridge loan due in 72 hours. The creditor is Sterling Finch Capital, and the value of Thorn's stock is too low to secure another round of funding. They are on the brink of total collapse." Anna looked at her father, confused. "What does that have to do with me?" A cold, dangerous smile touched Konstantin Volkov's lips for the first time. "Because, my daughter, 48 hours ago, through a series of shell companies, I purchased Sterling Finch Capital." The implication settled on Anna with the force of a physical blow. Her father not only had the power to save her, he held the entire Thorn legacy in the palm of his hand. "They humiliated you because they saw you as worthless," Konstantin said, his voice now like ice. "They are about to discover your true worth and their own bankruptcy. We are not flying anywhere tonight. We are going back to the city. I have a press conference scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Volkov Tower. The world is about to meet my daughter again. Not as Eliza Thorn, the discarded wife, but as Anna Volkov, the sole heir to my empire." He looked at her, his dark eyes searching hers. "They tried to bury you, Anna. It is time to show them that you are the seed of a forest they cannot comprehend. The new empire." Anna did not sleep. She spent the rest of the night in a penthouse suite in the Volkov Tower that made the Thorn residence feel like a shabby cottage. It was a space of quiet power, with panoramic views of a city she had only experienced from a position of weakness until now. A wardrobe of clothing, perfectly her size, had been curated by an unseen hand. Not a single piece was flashy or ostentatious. They were power suits from Armani, sleek dresses from Heiress, custom coats from Max Mara. The clothes of a woman who ran boardrooms, not decorated them. She chose a charcoal gray suit with defined lines. It felt like armor. When she looked in the mirror, she no longer saw the frightened woman from the red carpet. She saw a flash of her father's steel in her own eyes. At 9:45 a.m., she met Konstantin in his vast minimalist office. The room was dominated by a single, enormous slab of black granite that served as a desk. On it was a single monitor showing the live feed from a dozen financial news channels. Every one of them was buzzing with speculation. Reclusive billionaire Konstantin Volkov to give first public press conference in 20 years. "They expect an acquisition announcement," Konstantin said, not taking his eyes off the screen. "Or perhaps news of my death." He smirked. "They will get something far more interesting." He turned to her. "Are you ready?" Anna took a deep breath. "No, but I'm doing it anyway." A look of immense pride crossed his face. "That is the Volkov way." At 10:00 a.m. Sharp, they walked onto a stage in the Tower Auditorium. The room was packed with hundreds of reporters, the blinding flash of cameras even more intense than at the gala. But this time, it felt different. Anna was not a target. She was part of the force commanding the attention. She stood beside her father at a simple podium, featuring the Volkov logo, a stylized wolf head. Konstantin stepped up to the microphone. The room fell silent. "Good morning," he began, his voice quiet, yet powerful, filling the large space effortlessly. I have not addressed the public in many years. I prefer to let my work speak for itself. Today, however, is an exception. Today is not about business. It is about family. It is about legacy." He paused, letting those words hang in the air. "For many years, the world has believed I have no heir, that the Volkov empire would be dismantled and sold off upon my death. They were wrong. Today, I am here to correct the record and introduce you to the future of this company." He turned and gestured to Anna. "This is my daughter, Anna Volkov. Due to private family matters, she has lived her life out of the public eye. But that time is over. Effective immediately, she will take a position on the board of Volkov Global Logistics as vice president. And upon my retirement, she, and she alone, will be my successor." A wave of shock rippled through the auditorium. Gasps, frantic typing, whispered exclamations. The reporters were stunned. Anna felt their collective gaze, but it was no longer filled with pity. It was filled with awe, confusion, and a frantic desire to understand. But Konstantin was not finished. He held up a hand for silence. "That is my first announcement," he said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "The second is a small piece of business news. As of 3 days ago, Volkov Global acquired a controlling stake in the financial firm, Sterling Finch Capital. As our first commercial act, we have reviewed their portfolio. The $300 million bridge loan, extended to the Thorn Corporation, has been deemed an unacceptable risk. We are calling in that loan." He stressed the words. "Effective immediately. They have until the close of business tomorrow to pay it in full." If the first announcement was a shockwave, this was a nuclear detonation. Every reporter in the room understood the implication. Calling in a loan of that size, without warning, was a death sentence. The Thorn Corporation was finished. Konstantin looked directly into the main camera, as if speaking to the Thorns themselves. "Volkov Global has a zero-tolerance policy for poor character and bad investments. We believe the management of the Thorn Corporation has demonstrated a catastrophic failure in both. We will not finance their collapse." Then he looked at Anna. His expression softened. "My daughter will be handling the restructuring of our new acquisitions. I have full confidence in her vision and integrity, qualities that are apparently in short supply elsewhere." He then turned and walked off the stage, leaving Anna at the podium. This was her moment, her test. Anna stepped forward, her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked at the sea of faces, the flashing lights, and thought of the red carpet. She thought of Alexander's betrayal and Eleanor's cruelty. They had tried to make her small, but standing here, backed by the power of the Volkov name, she had never felt bigger. "My father has laid out the business case," she said, her voice clear and firm, betraying none of her inner turmoil. "But let me be clear on the philosophy. The future of Volkov Global will not only be about profit. It will be about building things of value, things with integrity. We will invest in sustainable technology, ethical practices, and visionary architecture that serves communities, not just the blind greed of a few. We will build a legacy, not just a balance sheet." "Thank you. I will not be taking questions at this time." With that, she turned and followed her father off the stage, leaving a room in absolute chaos. The spotlight that had been used to humiliate her was now illuminating her ascent. The world had just witnessed the fall of one dynasty and the spectacular, unexpected birth of another. Don't forget to click the notification bell to catch our next story. The reckoning, the fall, was not a gentle descent. It was a detonation. Inside the Thorn penthouse, the morning had begun with its usual sterile ritual. The news channel was on, a low hum in the background, as they awaited the highly publicized press conference of the recluse, Konstantin Volkov. "He'll probably announce he's finally dying," Eleanor commented dryly. The market will welcome the boost. A corporate breakup of that magnitude will create opportunities. Alexander grunted in agreement, his mind on the looming deadline of their bridge loan. The press conference was distraction. Then, Konstantin Volkov appeared on screen. When he started talking about family and legacy, Eleanor arched a perfectly sculpted brow. When he said the word daughter, Alexander finally looked up from his tablet. A flicker of mild curiosity in his eyes, and then the camera panned to the woman standing next to him. For one frozen second, Alexander's brain could not process the image. It was Eliza, but it wasn't. The woman on the screen wore a charcoal gray suit that looked like armor. Her posture was rigid, and her eyes, staring out at the world's press, held a steeliness he had never seen before. This was not the meek, malleable wife he had left alone on the red carpet. "Anna," Alexander breathed. The word was a puff of air. Eleanor's teacup rattled against her saucer. Her face, a carefully maintained mask of icy control, seemed to shatter. What is this joke?" she whispered. But it was no joke. The name on the podium plaque was clear. Anna Volkov, as Konstantin's words washed over them. Sole heir, my successor, vice president. The reality began to seep into the room. Cold and toxic, the air grew thin, hard to breathe. This was not just a shock. It was a fundamental violation of the laws of their universe. Eliza, their provincial problem, their simple, inadequate Eliza, was the secret princess of a kingdom infinitely more powerful than their own. Then came the second announcement. The casual mention of Volkov Global acquiring Sterling Finch Capital, his clinical assessment of the Thorn Corporation as an unacceptable risk, and the final, brutal declaration. He was calling in the loan. The champagne flute in Eleanor's hand, forgotten until that moment, slipped from her trembling fingers. It didn't just drop. It shattered on the marble floor. The sound as sharp and violent as a gunshot in the silent, horrified room. "He's ruined us," Alexander said, his voice hollow. He looked at the screen where Anna was now speaking, her voice calm and clear, a voice he had interrupted so often. She was speaking of vision and integrity, and every word felt like a judgment. The phone started then. First Alexander's, then Eleanor's, then the landline on the console table. They didn't ring. They screamed. A cacophony of incoming calls from board members, investors, bankers, and the howling press. The sound was a death knell, an electronic chorus announcing the end of their dynasty. On the television, the stock ticker for Thorn Corp was a blinking line of blood red, plunging into an abyss. "Call her!" Eleanor shrieked, her voice stripped of all its cultivated grace, now a raw, rough thing. She gripped Alexander's arm, her nails digging into the fine wool of his suit. "Call your wife. Get on your knees. Apologize. Beg. Grovel. Do you understand me, Alexander? You will fix this." Alexander, fumbling with his phone like a clumsy teenager, his hands shaking too hard to use the screen, finally managed to find Anna's contact. He pressed the call button. It rang once, twice, and then clicked. Her crisp, professional voice filled the silence. "You have reached Anna Volkov. Please leave a message. Anna Volkov." She had already shed his surname like dead skin. The formal, impersonal greeting was a wall he could not climb. He tried again. Voicemail. He began to type a series of frantic, incoherent texts, his thumb slipping on the glass. "Anya, we have to talk. Last night was a terrible mistake. I am so sorry. It was my mother. You know how she is. She pressured me. I love you. You have to believe me. You can't do this. My whole family's legacy is at stake. Please, Anya, don't let him. I'll do anything. I'll leave my mother. We can go away. Just call me." He stared at the screen, waiting. The word "delivered" appeared beneath each message. A moment later, it was replaced by the word read. Then, nothing. Her silence was more damning than any angry response. It was the silence of total indifference. The finality. The final act of their corporate execution was swift. That afternoon, a team of 4 attorneys from the newly acquired Volkov firm arrived at the Thorn Corporation headquarters. They moved through the office of terrified murmurs with the unsettling calm of undertakers. They did not threaten or shout. They simply presented the documentation to Alexander in the main boardroom, the same room where his great-grandfather's portrait hung on the wall. The documents were unassailable. Liquidation proceedings would begin at dawn. Desperate, broken, and out of other recourse, Alexander drove to the only place he knew he had to go. He left his car with an astonished valet and entered the lobby of the Volkov Tower. It was like stepping into a cathedral of power, all soaring glass and polished black granite. The air was cool and still. He, who had always been the one to make others wait, was now the supplicant. He said he approached the main security desk. His voice cracked as he asked to see Anna Volkov. The guard, a man built like a monument, did not even blink. He spoke quietly into a receiver and said, "Please wait here, Mr. Thorn." Alexander waited. For an hour, he stood in the center of that immense lobby, a public spectacle of ruin. Businessmen and women in sharp suits strode past, their eyes glancing at him with pity and morbid curiosity. He was a ghost at the party, a living relic of a fallen house. Finally, it was not Anna who descended in the silent, gleaming elevator. It was Mikhail, her father's head of security, who approached with a measured, deliberate step. His face was a stone mask. "Mr. Thorn," Mikhail said, his voice neutral. "Mrs. Volkov is in a board meeting and will be for the remainder of the evening. She will not be disturbed." "Please," Alexander pleaded, his pride gone. "Just tell her I'm here. I need to speak to her. 5 minutes." "That will not be possible," Mikhail stated. His tone brooked no argument. "However, she asked me to give you this." He handed Alexander a simple manila envelope. Alexander's name was written on it, in a sharp, unfamiliar script he vaguely recognized as Eliza's. With trembling hands, he tore it open. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a divorce filing, citing irreconcilable differences. Her signature, clear and confident at the bottom, read Anna Volkov. The second was a restraining order, legally barring him from her home or place of work, citing emotional distress and public harassment. Alexander looked at the cold black ink. The world narrowed down to the stark finality of the words on the page. He was no longer her husband. He was a threat. He looked up at the monolithic tower, a fortress of glass and steel reaching into the sky. Anna was up there, in a world he could no longer reach, a world where she was powerful and he was nothing. The architect's vision. At that very moment, Anna was sitting at a long, polished obsidian table, 30 floors above him. She was presenting her initial analysis of a deep-sea mining project proposal. "While the projected return is high," she was saying, her voice steady, "the environmental impact study is inadequate. It fails to account for the disruption to local marine ecosystems. The potential for long-term brand damage outweighs the short-term profit. I recommend we discard it and instead redirect the investment into the development of the new 5-volt battery technology our lab in Stuttgart is pioneering. It is a more sustainable and ultimately more profitable long-term play." The seasoned executives around the table, men who had initially viewed her as their boss's pet project, listened intently. They exchanged impressed glances. Her insights were sharp, her vision clear, her principles unshakable. She wasn't just the heir, she was an asset. 3 months passed. The Thorn name had faded into a whisper of a bygone era. It became a cautionary tale told in business schools, a case study on the lethal combination of arrogance and fragility. Alexander and Eleanor, stripped of their surnames' power and their fortune, retreated into a life of bitter obscurity. The name on everyone's lips was now Volkov, specifically Anna Volkov. Her ascent had been meteoric, yet solidly based. She was not the ceremonial vice president many had initially assumed. Her mind, trained to see flaws in a blueprint, was uniquely suited to spotting weaknesses in a business portfolio. Her first major initiative was born out of a desire to infuse the cold world of corporate power with the warmth of human purpose. She presented a vision for the Volkov Sustainable Future Foundation, a revolutionary entity that would use the corporation's immense resources not for charity handouts, but for building self-sustaining ecosystems, innovative, eco-friendly housing, community centers powered by renewable energy, and public spaces designed by the people who would use them. Konstantin had listened, his expression unreadable, as she spoke with a passion he hadn't seen since her mother, Katerina, had argued with him about art and poetry decades ago. When she finished, the boardroom was silent. Anna held her breath, ready for opposition. Instead, her father nodded slowly and deliberately. "Build it." His voice resonated with finality. "This is a worthy legacy." The first cornerstone of that legacy was laid in a long-neglected neighborhood in San Diego, where Anna had designed a community hub that was now nearing completion. It was her masterpiece, a building that seemed to breathe, constructed from reclaimed wood and recycled steel, with a sloping green roof that harvested rainwater and solar panels that shone like a promise under the sun. Her relationship with her father, once a 25-year chasm of silence, had begun to feel like a home. The last echo, that sense of peace and purpose, accompanied her on a cool spring evening as she stood on the observation deck of the nearly finished San Diego Community Center. The sun was setting, casting a warm, golden light over the city. Below, the sound of children's laughter echoed from the new playground, a sound of pure joy in a place where there had been little. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. An unknown number. She usually ignored them, but something made her answer. "Hello?" A silence. Then a hesitant, cracked voice she barely recognized. "Anna?" It was Alexander. The sound of his voice did not elicit anger or pain. It was like hearing a song from a distant, half-forgotten time in her life. I just wanted to say," he stammered, the old suave confidence utterly gone, replaced by the raw edge of defeat. "I saw you on the news, the foundation, the San Diego Center. It's incredible. It's what you were always meant to do." He paused, taking a ragged breath. "You were always designing things, building things. You tried to show me the blueprints for that housing project you won the award for. And I think I was looking at my phone. I was a fool, Anna. I was too small to see how big you were." Anna leaned against the cool, firm presence of the railing. She listened, not to his words, but to the vast, empty space behind them, a space filled with his regret, his weakness, his loss. The woman she used to be would have wept with vindication upon hearing this confession. She would have craved this apology like water in a desert. But the woman she was now simply felt a quiet, profound sense of detachment. "Thank you, Alexander," she said. And she was surprised to find that she meant it. His apology wasn't for her. It was for him, a necessary step in his own diminished life. Her acceptance, if that was what it was just as important for her. It was the quiet, non-slamming close of a door. "I wish you well." She ended the call before he could say more. A quiet step approached from behind. It was Mikhail, holding a dark cashmere coat against the growing night chill. His stern face held a familiar look of paternal vigilance. "Your father is waiting, Miss Volkov," his voice a respectful murmur. "The helicopter is ready to take you to the signing of the Valencia port project." Anna smiled, a genuine, quiet smile, as she slipped her arms into the coat. "Thank you, Mikhail." She cast one last look at the horizon. The lights of Miami no longer mocked her with a life she couldn't have. They were simply lights. Her life, her work, her future. It was here, on the ground, building things that mattered. The spotlight hadn't just shifted. She had seized it, melted it down, and reforged it into a beacon, illuminating a better world designed by herself. The meaningful ending. The story of Anna Volkov is a powerful reminder that our worth is never determined by those who seek to diminish us. It is forged in the fire of our own resilience and defined by the strength we find when we have nothing left to lose. From the depths of public humiliation, she didn't just get up. She rebuilt her entire world, transforming a legacy of cold power into a new empire of purpose and vision. Her journey teaches us that the most beautiful structures are often built upon the foundations of what was broken. Call to action. Have you ever felt underestimated or defined by someone else's opinion? What would you build if you had the chance to rewrite your own story in a place like Las Vegas, London, or Dubai? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below. If Anna's incredible transformation from victim to visionary has inspired you, please show your support. Liking this story, sharing it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribing to our channel for more stories of epic comebacks and ultimate empowerment.